One of the co-owners of RaceSpot TV is lying at the side of the road somewhere, so hopefully he'll be found. But otherwise, we've got racing here to do in Skip Barber race cars, as we see Alan Patterson going very wide in turn 1, clearly inspecting the track for safety features. Just going to run you down qualifying really quickly. That was, of course, David Grinnell taking a pole here today with a 14.887. Stuart Adcock in second, Clark Williams third, Tom Ward down in fourth, Anthony Diaz in fifth, Adrian Bidwell, Bill Frazier. Rest of those positions should be up on your screen. A couple of early incidents so far involving, of course, Anthony Diaz right now, and that was also the car of Clark Williams and the car of, that was also, if I can actually read this quickly enough, Adrian Bidwell. Those guys currently running still. But the short, sharp, tight nature of this former racetrack, which is now, Johnny, I believe, a housing complex.
Yeah, it certainly is. Good evening, everybody. And it is, and certainly, unfortunately, a housing complex now, but it's still a great racetrack in iRacing, laser scanned for permanent use here on the sim. And I mean, talking about those incidents for him, Antonides, at the early stages around turn 4, a huge pile-up, that little train wreck they had there, which is not good for their race. Maybe a little bit of damage, but they're on towards, he's still in P8, I think, so still plenty of chances to go in this race.
There is indeed, of course, very tight, twisty racetrack, as we just alluded to, as Antonides goes drifting. True. You are not in Tokyo, my friend. But of course, tight track, it always invites a lot of close racing, and of course, close racing can lead to miscommunication and contact, as we saw running up towards the bridge sector. This is one of the few figure-8 racetracks, and one unlike Suzuka, which doesn't host Formula 1, but has hosted Fiat supercars in the past. But figure-8 racetrack, of course, and these drivers now running with Grinnell still leading from the pole into that final sector with a great left hand here up over this small crest, with a fast chicane up ahead, and the final corner up towards the end of the circuit here. This is a great track, a real driver's track, Johnny. Lots of exciting opportunities.
Yeah, the good thing about driver's tracks is obviously driver makes the biggest difference. Lots of undulation and camber, and that's how you notice driver racetracks, when corners are off camber and they're very difficult to maneuver around. That's where the driver makes a huge difference. And right now, I mean, we see at turn 1, Antonides really pushing and drifting across the racetrack. So, I mean, you have to be super smooth on racetracks like these.
You do indeed. Dave Grinnell still leading up the front. Great performance from him recently. He's had some good finishes. Tom Ward up into second place right now, 31.4 seconds back, being followed rather closely by Stuart Adcock. Those two drivers definitely catching up right now. But looking at P number 5, that is a huge train of cars with, at the front, Adrian Bidwell, I believe that is. And we also have Clark Williams, Rich Jones, Mark Turner, actually, not that with the car of Bidwell, but yep. We have Rich Jones, Mark Turner, Bill Frazier, and Antonides towards the rear there. He's been passed by a few of these guys. And behind them, that is Paul Thurston in the blue and yellow machine you see in the back of your picture. Followed up by Tim Adcock and Mick Watson. So, major train here in your mid-pack. Rich Jones on the attack, but trying to follow exactly what Bill Frazier will be doing to Mark Turner up ahead of him. Bill Frazier looking in the hairpin. Well, the chicane can't make it stick. We'll look to the inside of the final corner. No real opportunity. He'll slot back in line and hope for a run to turn 1.
Oh, you can see Bill Frazier's taking much wider lines through corners, so he's certainly being slowed down here by Mark Turner. He's just going to have to tuck into the slipstream, maybe throw it up the inside into turn 1. It will be tough. He's a bit too far back, has a little peak, but in these Skip Barber cars, we know not as powerful when you head in towards the first corner here. And Rich Jones as well, getting very hot under the brakes. But for Bill Frazier, slowly needs to just get his way past Mark Turner. Actually, I take that back. He needs to make his way through as quickly as possible. And Mark Turner is really taking some tight lines through some of these corners.
Yes, indeed. Mark Turner trying to hold on to that position he has right now, P5. Doesn't want to lose out. And, of course, Clark Williams ahead of him, involved in that earlier incident. In fact, he was turned around, still running very well without a nose cone on that car or a front wing, but will soon come under attack from Rich Jones if he can clear Mark Turner along with Bill Frazier. Those two drivers, we know they've got speed. Hopefully they can use that here. They can get past that number 9 machine. Although my last experience here, Johnny, was driving Fiat supercars. So turn 1 was a very different animal to it for these guys, of course. These cars are much smaller, much lighter. They can carry more speed into that fast shoot left-hander.
It's much more fun, I think, with these cars because you can just the sense of speed as you scream into the first corner, but it's more of a challenge in the V8s where turn 1 is much more of a corner. But you can see there, these drivers basically straight line turn 1 and start braking for turn 2. But that battle for P5 is quite heating up quite a lot here. Clark Williams with damage, really needs to get his head down, and he's not going to make up much pace to those top 3 who have broken away. 7.6 seconds between Williams and leader David Grunnell. But between Grunnell, Ward and Adcock in the first, second and third, these 3 are in their little race of their own right now. So these 3, which one of them, we're not going to know who's going to come out on top by the end of the race.
Indeed, and we know Stuart Adcock had a bad run out at Summit Point the other week, so he's hoping for a much better result here, and of course fewer friction racing cars around to knock him off the track. I'm sure he'll be happy about, but we're keeping a stern eye on Tom Ward up ahead. That car chasing down David Grunnell. He's come from 2 seconds back to being within a second now of your race leader. Grunnell still leading the way. He's led every lap so far. 7 laps out of the prescribed 20. Of course, a very short track here, so we'll get a nice high lap number. Unlike the 9 laps we did at Spa last week, it was somewhat short, but makes it more interesting, of course. There's a few corners on this track, Johnny, that are really quite tough for the drivers, and every extra time you have to go through them, they become even more of a challenge. The run up to the bridge, for example, they run through the S's towards the left-hander into the final sector, and turn 1, of course. They're all very tricky corners you must try to get right, as we see there. Antonius looking at the inside of Jones. Jones goes wide. Can Antonius get around him? No, he'll hold the inside line for turn 3 down here. Antonius will have a good run around the outside. Can he make it stick?
Will be interesting to see. Mick Watson behind had a spin at turn 1 and 2. He's off the racetrack. But this battle between Antonides and Jones is... look at Antonides trying to go around the outside now, braking very deep. Can he pull it off? Oh, he's done it. Wonderful. And I think Rich Jones almost lost the car as well, trying to throw it up the inside. But for Antonides, another position picked off. For Rich Jones just needs to keep himself within those guys in front, because we know between Williams, Turner and Fraser, who are battling, if they get into an incident, these 2 behind need to capitalize as soon as they possibly can.
They do. An excellent move there from Fahim Antonides around the outside of Rich Jones in a very tricky section. We were just talking about how hard that bridge sector is in the corner at the top, which is a blind apex. Can be for these drivers, but he makes it stick around the outside, which is quite a feat of racecraft. Of course, now has to do that job of catching back up to Bill Fraser, Mark Turner and Clark Williams ahead. Just losing so much time, and it is very evident here how much time those 2 lost from racing side by side because this track is so tight.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, talking about challenging corners, the blind corners and off camber are the ones that are going to be most challenging. When you cannot see where you're going, you're basically using other references and trying to guess where your lines are and where you're making decisions.
Oh, sorry,
right
Johnny,
now,
I was going to
Robert
interrupt you
Plumley,
for a second. Yeah, you were talking about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Robert Plumley is trying to go around the outside. I believe that's Patrick Fairbanks. He was trying to make a passing maneuver on. A little bit of a battle near the bottom order of the field. These guys just battling for those consolation prizes, you could say. But for Robert, not paying off for him at the moment. He's currently in P14. Really, we could still have a go at Patrick Fairbanks here on the main straight. Something to look out for between these 2. So battles throughout the field. It's good to see here. 11 laps remaining.
It is indeed. And let's go have a quick look up here at Clark Williams in that 98 machine. Let's see if we can get a camera to look at the front of his car. Of course, no one ahead of him, but he has no nose cone. Not just no front wing, but no nose cone. His feet are very cold right now in that Skip Barber race car, as they are completely exposed to the elements. And well, he's doing an incredible job of keeping up to speed, and let's just say, Johnny, this is entirely because of the tight nature of this track. It's more mechanical grip involved, and the aerodynamic smoothness, as we see Mark Turner going round the outside of Bill Fraser. Bill Fraser might have the inside for his corner. It's compensating really for that lack of aero he has, because it's more of a technical track.
Yeah, that could certainly be the case. It's an interesting conundrum to think about. Sometimes it will be a detriment, sometimes it might even be a benefit. In terms of cold feet, that's always going to be a detriment. The weather here in Australia is extremely cold at the moment, so he's certainly going to probably have frostbite by the end of the race, so RIP to his legs. But Bill Frazier right now is seriously impatient, and that's I mean that in a good way. He really wants to get past Mark Turner. He wants to get ahead of Clark Williams. And it's important right now, this run out of the last corner. He gets a great one, but Mark Turner perfects it even better. Antonides. Oh, Antonides, another spin, and his race has taken another turn for the worst.
Indeed it has, and hopefully we're going to get a replay up right now, and we can see exactly what happens to Fim Antonides. He tracks out very wide, taps that wall, and he just loops it round. Big mistake from him. And we have an error from Dave Grunhill, your race leader, no longer. Turn 1, the back end steps out in his car. Replay up on your screens. Back end steps, nearly hits Stuart Adcock. Round he goes. Dave Grunhill relegated to P3, but with 10 seconds to spare over 4th. He could still be looking at a podium, Johnny.
He could certainly still, but those guys in P4, 5 and 6 right now need to work on catching the top 3. They're not going to catch them on the racetrack with 10 laps remaining. It's not impossible, but based on their pace right now, it's not going to be something realistic. So they make mistakes, such as Grunhill just did. They can find them out of rhythm, maybe pick them off in the remaining minutes of this race. And you never know, those guys such as Clark Williams, Bill Frazier, maybe even Mark Turner might end up winning this race. So certainly something to watch about. Battle for the lead though, it's heating up quite a lot.
It is, and out wide goes Adcock in that run to turn 1. Can he go around the outside of Ward? He cannot. He just slots back in line. This could be an interesting fight for the front, but while we watch this one, Johnny, you alluded earlier that Mr. Williams might end up with frostbite. Is it really that cold in Australia at the moment?
No, well, my hands are... I can't even move my...
Are we talking
knuckles,
relatively
whatever.
cold or really cold? Because you lot are quite soft when it comes to temperature.
Yeah, no, it's nothing. It's nothing, don't worry. But
Indeed.
yeah,
Well, look at this. Adcock, he's really starting to pull up the pace now behind Ward, trying to find a way past. He's closing in on this run towards the final sector. Might he be close enough for the final lap? Oh, tail starting to step there on Tom Ward, under pressure from the 52.
It's really important right now that if these two battle, David Grunhill just gets his corners right. He's 4.9 seconds behind at the moment. Now we'll pay attention to that over the next few minutes, because the more that these two start slicing and dicing, they may even go side by side once again here on the main straight, Rachel. It's just going to allow Grunhill to get back into the battle for the lead. So Adcock tucking into the slipstream, a big chance into turn 1 and 2.
He does certainly have a chance coming up here, but will he be able to use it though? He goes very wide for a deep entry. Look at how far Tom Ward goes to the inside, taking that defensive line. Doesn't want Stuart Adcock to get underneath him, but Adcock can go for a good run here and get the undercut. He won't be quite close enough. He's certainly telegraphing his intentions, Johnny. He's making it very visible that he's looking towards the outside. This could be a sign he might dive to the inside, approaching 1 next time.
Yeah, it's a bit... I think... maybe these cars are a lot smaller, but they could seriously be as close to that. It's like they don't want to touch each other. Get closer than that, boys. Come on. Cross the next main straight when they come around right now. So the gap between Grunhill and the top 2 is 4.5, now 4.6. So another few tenths with 8 laps remaining. But for Adcock, he needs to force Ward to make more mistakes. He's forcing him into unideal lines. Now it needs to force something else, and he may even take P1. And once he does get P1, if he does get it, he needs to break away as soon as possible. Maybe even a lunge into the final corner. No, stays patient, and he's going to have a great little exit out of the final corner.
He is, of course. Look at how close these guys are tracking out to that pit exit wall there, Johnny. They're so close. I mean, it would take 1 lapse in concentration from one of these two, and they could be in the wall. But look at that run he has there for Stuart Adcock, sitting in behind Tom Ward there, waiting for him to go wider. He'll try and follow him in.
No.
Oh, not ideal. He gets on the grass. He'll lose some time there. Tom Ward, your race leader, might even lose second. He won't. He's close enough. He'll back up to pace. And Grunhill wobbles, trying to hold the pace in there to try and take advantage of that error. So in trying to kind of take advantage of Stuart Adcock, Grunhill actually gave him the position.
Yeah, what Adcock needed to do was he needed to pull alongside Ward to the right side, and then at the last second you turn to that wide line he took before. So you force Ward to take that inside line, and you still get your ideal line. Now, yes, you do scrub a little bit of speed, but you gain that speed by, as Adcock runs very wide again, keeping the car together, you do gain that speed relatively through Ward's loss, if that makes sense in any case. So a lesson learnt, as Adcock will lose the car as well. He's going to lose P2 to Clark Williams, and a big spin there, Rachel, we don't like to see from the top 3 leaders.
No, and he's lost 3, 4, 5 positions here as Rich Jones in P number 7 will come past. That'll be down to P8. No, he'll get past for that as well. And here comes another Adcock, which could also get past. So, will we see Adcock block? I don't know, but either way, I had to make the joke. But he's tracking out now, trying to keep that car up to pace, definitely off the pace. We'll see the other Adcock come past, or will we? Going to take out defensive line again. He's hemorrhaged so many positions, down to P8 on the track, and from running second, that must be heartbreaking for him. As we look up towards P3 and P4, that is the rather cold-footed Clark Williams and Bill Fraser, the cold-blooded Scotsman who's got nerves of steel. He's been showing some real racing acumen recently, Johnny. Bill Fraser here looking at the inside there of Clark Williams. Can he get past him? He's taking him all race so far. Lap 15, will this be time?
Well, he's got the grip now on the inside as Williams runs very wide and Bill Fraser moves up into the final podium position. Good setup across the main straight. You know, you have to pick your lines right, and he forced him into the outside line into turns 3 and 4 there. So Bill Fraser now off the racetrack as well, but you'll still keep P3 away, and this is where Stuart Adcock spun last lap around. 6 laps remaining, and I think Grunnell 5.3 behind Tom Ward. All Tom Ward needs to do is keep his concentration. He's lucky it's not a Grand Prix event, Rachel, because normally in those Formula 1 races, it's another 45 minutes of leading, but for Tom Ward, only another 5 laps.
Indeed it is. Of course, these drivers will not have to pit during this series. Of course, if you want to see Skip Barber's in pit road, you can always come and watch the 2K Cup on Sunday nights here on RaceSpot TV. But UK Night Skip Barbers, this is sprint racing at its finest. These guys put only enough fuel in to make the race distance, and they go hard or go home. And there's Tom Ward here. Well, he inherited that lead from the mistake by David Grunnell, who lost it into turn 1 on his own, unforced error. And again, unforced errors by Stuart Adcock chasing down that race lead. The race lead has been toxic here. Can Tom Ward hold on for another 5 laps and bring this one home in victory lane? We'll find out soon enough, but we're going to look back in that pack towards where Clark Williams is and Bill Fraser. Fraser not really able to escape from Williams despite the more aerodynamic properties of his race car. Mark Turner behind as well, so a mistake by any of these guys could result in a lot of positions lost. I mean, Johnny, these guys, they're running so close together, and it's been like this all race. We've got to expect somebody will put a foot wrong sooner or later.
Yeah, it certainly is the case. I mean, it is more of a sprint race, so you're going to take more risks, and for Clark Williams, that's all he's going to be doing right now in P4. Stuart Adcock made his way past Paul Thurston, I believe, so he's up into P7 this time around, just slowly making his way back through the field. Might be too little too late. 4 laps remaining in this one. I think the top 2 is all settled and done, but the battle for that final podium position, Clark Williams has awoken himself, and he's not going to give it up too easily as he throws his car deep into turn 2.
He does. I think he's got his feet out the open front end of that cockpit, and he's pedaling as well because he's pushing so hard, trying to regain that position lost to Bill Fraser. And we've got to say, just what a credit it is to his driving ability that Clark Williams has held on this long with a damaged race car. But something we do know might be a concern, Johnny, is we only have a few laps remaining. Can he make it on fuel? These guys we know at the top edge of the field, they take just the fuel they need. Of course, he lost his nose cone very early on in this race. It was lap number 2. Has that caused extra drag? It will mean he's burnt more fuel.
Yeah, it could certainly be the case, and that's an interesting thing to think about. But you know, as a driver, it's about style. Some drivers like to fuel save. Some would just take the extra 1 or 2 liters just because they don't want to be bothered with, you know, doing all that stuff. But the more you slipstream, the more fuel you save. So sometimes there are drivers who might end a race with 2 or 3 liters more than they want. So that's why some drivers under fuel. But it's the risk you take is that if you're under fuel and you don't plan on leading the race and you end up leading the race like Tom Ward is now, you know, is he okay on fuel? Because was he expecting to be on his own and not be slipstreaming as much as he has been this race, as Clark Williams runs very wide through turn 2? So that's something to think about, you know, with 3 laps remaining. Some drivers, the more you slipstream in the race, obviously the more fuel you save. So if you are on pole position, expect those drivers to carry more fuel.
Well, you can indeed, but of course we talked about how twisty and tight this track is. A lot of acceleration, braking, deceleration, so maybe not as much of a drafting track as you'd think, but there's definitely the ability to lift and coast in corners, carry speed through the corners, so there is opportunity to feel safe even on a track like this. But it's fuel saving you can do without the draft. Of course, tracks like Spa, You can sit in that draft, you can save a lot of racing fuel. But as things stand, Bill Fraser's starting to pull away now from Clark Williams. He's made a couple of mistakes. Those tyres getting a little bit warm. And up ahead, he's coming up to lap for Fahim Antonides. He was running ahead of him at one point. In fact, they were racing. Antonides, of course, we saw with that big error on the start-finish straight, clipping the outside wall, and that cost him a position on the lead lap. He will be the only driver one lap down, and so far, we have no drivers retired, Johnny, which is unusual and awesome at the same time.
Man, it is awesome. And hopefully none in the last 2 laps.
Now they'll all crash.
No, hopefully not. As Mark Turner had a little peek at Clark Williams, those curves at turn 2, those high curves. For some reason, I like them, because it gives an equal playing field to all drivers, and it's an extra element of risk. Go too much on the inside. If you ever heard of it, some drivers miss the apex on the inside of a corner when they turn in too much. So those curbs prevent that, and it gives a little equal playing field with how much corner you can cut on a single corner, that is. So that was actually poorly phrased by me. But nevertheless, Bill Fraser is finally, as we mentioned before, breaking away from Clark Williams as we expected with that damage. So maybe Clark can still get a top 4 result here with 2 laps remaining. I believe Tom Ward, though, is coming towards his final lap of the race. It's been lights to flag, a great race for him.
It has indeed. Tom Ward now coming across the start-finish line. He will begin that final lap here. Tom Ward didn't start on pole. In fact, he qualified 4th. But Tom Ward will come home today your victor if he can keep this together for one more lap. David Grunell sitting in P number 2 at this moment. He led this race from the first half, qualified on pole, but he made a mistake in turn 1. Unforced error, spun the car, and that cost him everything. He will come home on the podium, but not the step he would have wanted. Bill Fraser qualified down in P7. He's up at a podium spot right now. He's pulled away from Clark Williams. Williams under attack now from Mark Turner and Rich Jones for, P4 from 5 and 6. Can they get him in his final lap? Will he hold on with that damaged race car? Will be a race for his memory as if he can. Back in the pack, of course, Stu Adcock, P7, Paul Thurston, P8, Paul P9, Tim Adcock, Adrian Bidwell. Well, he had a good start to this race again, involved in that early wreck, and it's cost him a lot of positions. Focusing on Tom Ward now, of course, he's your race leader, coming into the final sector now and up to the final corner. Tom Ward, one more corner to go, and he will take the checkered flag here at Oran Park, unchallenged, 5 seconds clear of second place. Tom Ward, your winner at Oran Park in the UK Night Skip Barber Racing School Series. He will take this one very happily and unchallenged in the latter half of the race. David Grinnell brings it home in P number 2 now and launches it off the track to signal his frustration at that one today. But no other positions have changed so far in the race. Clark Williams does bring it home in P4. Bill Fraser secures the final step on your podium, and those positions are going to be up on your screen right now as the drivers come across the start-finish line. Run you through those. Tom Ward, your winner here today, along with David Grinnell and Bill Fraser on the podium. Clark Williams, Mark Turner, Rich Jones, Stuart Adcock, Paul Thurston, Tim Adcock and Mick Watson round at your top 10. Mark O'Connell, P number 11, Simon Maltby, Adrian Bidwell, Alan Patterson, Robert Plumley, Patrick Fairbanks, Chris Robinson and Fahim Antonides rounding at your field, one lap down, and every single car finished here at Oran Park. Well, the track may be gone in real life, but here at RaceSpot TV and here on iRacing.com, it lives on and it still produces great racing, Johnny.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, another great race today. Good to see in the Skip Barber cars. My first ever event on Monday Night Skippy, so it's good to cap it off with an entertaining race. For David Grunnell, though, of course, he's going to be frustrated crossing the start-finish line. You know, he had the win in the bag, basically, in my opinion. So, just need to stay consistent. As I always speak about, Rachel, is that for young drivers or any driver in general, the more you work on and, the more you develop and improve your talent, consistency is always the last key or the last quality that you'll learn as a driver, the last thing that you'll develop. So anybody that lacks consistency but has the pace is always a promising prospect, because you can develop consistency through practice, whereas pace is a lot harder to learn. So if you have consistency and no pace, you'll obviously notice that a lot of teams will elect for the driver with the pace instead of the consistency.
They will indeed, and we see so much amazing racing going on in this series. The drivers are consistent, they're fair, they are sporting, and it produces some amazing racecraft. Tom Ward and Friction Racing having a great run here today, of course. A number of drivers not electing to race today, so Could either be a hangover from the British Grand Prix and the MotoGP series, of course, there's a lot of drivers attending that, and other events, but no less a great race here at Oran Park. It's just a shame, as we've mentioned, the track no longer exists. Well, I don't think we'll be getting anybody in for interviews today, so we're going to wrap this one up. I've been Rachel Whiteford, I've been joined by Johnny Simone and Hugo Louise, graciously stepping in at the last moment, fill in for the one, the only Will Vincent, who is somewhere growing up, we expect. But join us next week on UK and I Monday Night Skippies. We will see you then.